Congratulations! You just won millions of dollars in the lottery. The truth is, though, you're now screwed. No, really, you're screwed. You know, it's something of an open secret that winners of obnoxiously large jackpots tend to end up badly with alarming regularity. Perhaps this is a consequence of the sample. Demographics of lottery players might be exactly the wrong people to win large sums of money, or perhaps money is just the root of all evil. Either way, you're going to have to be careful. Don't believe me? Consider this. Large jackpot winners face double-digit multiples of probability versus the general population to be a victim of homicide, drug overdose, bankruptcy, and kidnapping. Believe it or not, your biggest enemy if you suddenly become possessed with large sums of money is you. At least you'll have the consolation of meeting your fate by your own hand, but if you can't manage it on your own, don't you worry. There are a number of willing participants ready to help you start your vicious downward spiral. Mind you, many of these will be friends, family, and acquaintances. Often they won't even have evil intentions, but as I'm sure you know, that makes little difference in the end. Most aren't evil, most aren't malicious. Some certainly are, but none of them are good for you. Let's take an example, and I can think of none better than Jack Whittaker. This Johnny Cash-attired West Virginia native is the poster boy for the dangers of winning the lottery. In 2002, Mr. Whittaker, who was 55, won what was at the time the largest single jackpot in U.S. history at $315 million. He planned to live as if nothing had changed, or so he said. He was remarkably modest and decent before winning the jackpot, and now he was going to be living on Easy Street. Not quite. Mr. Whittaker became the subject of a number of personal challenges, escalating into a number of tragedies, complicated by a number of legal troubles. Whittaker wasn't the typical lottery winner either. His net worth at the time of his win was in excess of $15 million, owing to his ownership in a successful contracting firm that he had in West Virginia. His claim to want to live as if nothing had changed actually seemed plausible. He should have been quite well equipped for wealth. He was already quite wealthy after all. By all accounts, he was very modest, low profile, generous, and good-natured. He should have coasted off into the sunset. Yeah, not exactly. Whittaker ended up taking the all-cash option, $170 million instead of the annuity option, and took possession of $114 million in cash after taxes. After that, things started to go south very quickly. Whittaker became the subject of a number of financial stalkers who would lurk at him at his regular breakfast hideout and accost him with suggestions of how to spend his money. Perhaps they had a surefire business plan, their daughter had cancer, a niece needed dialysis. Needless to say, Whittaker stopped going to his favorite breakfast restaurant. Eventually, they began ringing his doorbell, sometimes in the early morning. Before long, he was paying off-duty deputies to protect his family. He was accused of being heartless, cold, and stingy. Letters poured in, children with cancer, diabetes, MS, you name it. He hired 3 people just to sort the mail. He also hired a detective to filter out the false claims and the con men. But it wasn't just Whittaker who got the onslaught of abuse from his win. Brenda, the convenience store clerk who had sold Whittaker his ticket, was the victim of collateral damage. Whittaker had written her a check for $44,000 and bought her a house, but she was by no means a millionaire. Rumors that the state routinely paid the clerk who sold the winning ticket 10% of the jackpot winnings hounded her. She was followed home from work, threatened, and assaulted. Whittaker's car was twice broken into by trusted acquaintances who watched him leave large amounts of cash in it. $500,000 and $200,000 were stolen in two separate occasions. The thieves spiked Whittaker's drink with prescription drugs in the first instance. The second incident was the handiwork of his granddaughter's friends, who had been probing the girl for details on Whittaker's cash for weeks. Even Whittaker's good faith generosity was questioned. When he offered $10,000 to improve the city's water park so that it was more handicap accessible, locals complained that he spent more money at the strip club. Amusingly, though, this was actually true. Whittaker invested quite a bit of the money in his own business. He tripled the number of people he employed, making him one of the larger employers in the area, and eventually he had given away $14 million to charity through a foundation he set up. This is, of course, what you're supposed to do: set up a foundation, be careful about your charity giving. It all made no difference in the end. To top it all off, Whittaker had been accused of ruining a number of marriages. His money made other men look inferior, they said. Whenever he went in the small West Virginia town he called home, resentment would grow quickly, and it festered. Whittaker ended up paying 4 settlements related to this sort of claim. Yes, you heard that right. 4 settlements from other jealous men in the town. His family and their immediate circle were quickly the victims of odds-defying numbers of overdoses, ER visits, and even fatalities. His 18-year-old granddaughter, Brandy, who Whittaker had been giving a $2,100 per week allowance, was found dead after having been missing for several weeks. Her death was apparently from a drug overdose, but Whittaker suspected foul play. Her body had been wrapped in a tarp and hidden behind a rusted-out van. Her 17-year-old boyfriend had expired just 3 months earlier in Whittaker's vacation house, also from an overdose. Some of his friends had robbed the house after his overdose, stepping over his body to make their escape, and then returning again for more before stepping over his body again. The boy's parents sued for wrongful death, claiming that Whittaker's loose purse strings contributed to their son's death. Amazingly, juries are prone to award damages in cases such as these. Whittaker settled again. Even before the deaths, the local and state police had taken a special interest in Whittaker after his newfound fortune. He was arrested for minor offenses many times after his winnings, despite having had a nearly spotless record before his win. Whittaker's high profile couldn't have helped him much in this regard. In just 18 months, Whittaker had been cited for over 250 violations, ranging from broken taillights on every one of his 5 new cars to improper display of renewal stickers. He ended up filing a lawsuit charging various police organizations with harassment. This ended up going nowhere, and Whittaker was hit with the court costs. Later, Whittaker's wife ended up filing for divorce, and in the process froze a number of his assets and accounts. Caesars in Atlantic City sued him for $1.5 million to cover bounced checks caused by the freeze. Today, Whittaker is badly in debt, and bankruptcy looms large in his future. But hey, that's just one example, right? Wrong. Nearly 1/3 of all multi-million-dollar jackpot winners eventually declare bankruptcy. Some end up even worse. To give just a few examples, take Billy Bob Harrell. He won $31 million in Texas in 1997. Just 2 years later, he ended up committing suicide in the wake of incessant requests for money from friends and family. His last words were, "Winning the lottery was the worst thing that ever happened to me." Or take the example of William Post, who won $16.2 million in the Pennsylvania lottery in 1988. In 1989, his brother hired a contract murderer to kill him and his wife. He was also the subject of a number of lawsuits, and later on, he was convicted of assault after firing a gun at a debt collector. He ended up declaring bankruptcy and died in 2006. So let's say you happen to be one of the unlucky few to actually win the lottery. What do you do? How can you avoid the fates of those winners who came before? Buckle up, because I'm about to walk you through exactly how to do it. Okay, so there are a number of steps to take into consideration before even claiming your prize. So step number 1, and this is absolutely the most important, most critical step. When you find out you've won the lottery, tell no one, except for maybe your spouse, and that's only if you totally trust them. You're going to have to resist the urge to go posting on Facebook, or quitting your job right away, or going out and buying a bunch of Fabergé eggs. You'll have to tell some people eventually, but you need to take the time to think and work out who exactly you're going to tell and how you're going to tell them. This is where most lottery winners run into trouble. They announce that they've won to the whole world, and suddenly everyone who crosses their path has dollar signs in their eyes. Number 2, sign your ticket. Most lotteries require the ticket to be signed, or else whoever is holding the ticket can claim it. This is likely the most valuable piece of paper you will ever hold, so you want to make sure you cement your ownership of the ticket. Sign it, make multiple copies, and store the ticket at a bank safe deposit box until you're ready to claim the money. Number 3, retain an attorney. Get a partner from a larger national law firm that's well respected. Don't let them pawn off junior partners or associates on you. Insist that your lead be a partner who has been with the firm for a while and has a strong reputation. Do not, I repeat, do not use a local attorney. Don't use your long-standing family attorney who did your mother's will. Don't use the guy who fought off your parking tickets for you. And absolutely don't use any lawyer who has any connection whatsoever to your family or friends, even if it's someone you've trusted for your entire life. You want someone who's never heard of you, never heard of your family, never heard of any of your friends. Go to a large national law firm and ask for one of their trust and estates partners. You can look up reputable law firms from the top 50 firms at martindale.com. Number 4, anonymity. Once you've retained a good attorney, work with them to see how you can remain anonymous. Many lotteries require winners to release their name or go in front of cameras at a press conference. You want to do everything possible to avoid this. By publicizing your name, you'll be attracting people from all over the world to try and get a piece of you. 4th and 5th cousins, people with irresistible business opportunities, that guy you met in line at Wendy's once 10 years ago, they'll all be coming out of the woodwork and knocking on your door shortly after the announcement. If you live in one of these states, you're in luck, as they allow lottery winners to claim their winnings anonymously. Additionally, some other states like New York provide workarounds to claim winnings through an LLC. However, some states like Wisconsin and California force winners to claim their prize publicly. Work with your lawyer to find the best option to stay anonymous. Now that you've held in the secret of your win, signed your ticket, gotten an attorney, and figured out how you're going to remain anonymous, it's time to claim your prize, which brings us to step number 5. You'll need to decide whether to take the lump sum or the annuity, and it's almost always best to take the lump sum. The annuity is really only good if you have an addictive personality and can't control your spending. Most state lotteries pay your annuity by buying U.S. Treasury bonds and running the interest payments through their bureaucracy before sending it along to you with a chunk of the principal each month. You'll not be beating inflation by much, if at all, And there's no reason you couldn't just invest in treasury bonds yourself if a low single-digit return is acceptable to you. But let's say you plan to take the lump sum. Make sure you set your expectations straight. You aren't going to get even remotely the amount of the actual jackpot. Take our old friend Mr. Whittaker, for instance. Whittaker's jackpot was $315 million. He selected to take the lump sum cash up front option, which knocked off $145 million, or 46% of the total. That was then subject to withholding for taxes of $56 million, leaving him with $114 million in cash. In general, you should expect to get about half of the original jackpot if you elect the lump sum. After that, you should expect to lose around 33% of your already pruned figure to state and federal taxes. But hey, $114 million is still a nice chunk of change. Number 6. Decide how much you're going to give to family and friends. Personally, I would not set aside any more than 20% of your winnings for family and friends, but it's up to you how much. Figure that number out right now. Tell your lawyer that number and don't change it. To use the Whittaker example again, 20% of $114 million is $22.8 million. That leaves you with $91.2 million. When deciding on how much to give to family and friends, do not consult with your family and friends. You're going to get advice that is badly tainted by conflict of interest. And if other family members find out that Aunt Flo was consulted and they weren't, you'll never hear the end of it, and neither will Aunt Flo. This might later form the basis for an allegation that Aunt Flo unduly influenced you, and a lawsuit might magically appear on this basis. This exact scenario has happened to many lottery winners, and the plaintiffs won their cases. If you think this wouldn't happen to you or your family is not really like that, keep in mind money changes people. It brings out the worst in even the nicest folks. Once you've decided how much you're to set aside for your family and friends, do not give anyone cash, ever, period. Just don't. Don't buy them houses, don't buy them cars. Tell your attorney that you want to provide for your family and that you want to set up a series of trusts for them that will total 20% of your winnings, or whatever amount you choose. Tell your lawyer that you want your trust empowered to fund things like higher education, help with the purchase of a first home, a provision for weddings, whatever you think is best. Never put yourself in the position of handing out cash directly. Once you do, if you stop, you'll be accused of being a heartless bastard. It will be very easy to lose perspective. It's now the duty of your friends, family, relatives, hangers-on, and their inner circle to skew your perspective, and they take this job quite seriously. Setting up a trust, a managed fund for your family that is in the double-digit millions of dollars, is amazingly generous. You need never have trouble sleeping because you didn't lend your Uncle Jerry $20,000 in small denomination unmarked bills to start his chain of deep-fried peanut butter pancake restaurants. Your attorney should have a number of good ideas on how to parse this wealth out without turning your family members into the latest Paris Hilton. Number 7, don't hire an investment manager. You'll be encouraged to hire an investment manager. Considerable pressure will be applied to do this. Do not do this. Investment managers charge fees, usually a percentage of your assets. Consider this: if they charge just a 1% management fee, which is actually quite low, they have to beat the market by 1% every year just to break even. It's not worth it, and you don't need the extra return or the extra risk. Go for the index fund instead if you must invest in stocks. Not hiring an investment manager is a very hard rule to follow. They will come recommended by friends, by family. They'll be your second cousin on your mother's side. Investment managers will sound smart. They'll have lots of cool acronyms, nice PowerPoint presentations. They might even pay for your shrimp cocktail lunch or reminding you how massive the returns they can make for you. You should smile, thank them for their time, and then tell them you'll get back to them next week. Don't sign anything. Don't write it on a cocktail napkin. Lottery lawsuits have actually been won and lost over drunkenly scrawled cocktail napkin addition and subtraction figures. Never call the investment managers back. The tactic of smiling and thanking people for their time and promising to get back to them is going to have to become familiar. You'll have to learn to say no gently without saying the word no. It sounds underhanded and sneaky, and it is, but it needs to be part of your new survival strategy. And I mean the word survival quite literally. Number 8, set up a safety net. If you've won a big jackpot, there's no need to put your money into high-risk investments. You're already super rich, so why risk it? But how should you invest your money? You don't want to just store it under a mattress. Let's go back to the Whittaker example. You have $114 million in cash after taxes, and you've committed 20% of that, or $22.8 million, to a trust for your family and friends. I'm by no means a financial advisor, and this should not be taken as financial advice, but if I won, I would put another 20 to 30% into very stable US Treasury bonds, and perhaps some of that in another G7 Treasury instrument. This is your safety net. You'll be protected from yourself. You're going to be really tempted to start being a big investor. You're going to be convinced that you can double your money in Vegas with your awesome roulette system, or by funding your friend's amazing idea to sell lemming turds, or by shorting the North Pole ice market. Global warming, you know. This all sounds tempting. You'll say to yourself, it's okay. Even if I lose it all, I'll still have 10 or 20 million left. Anyone could live on that comfortably for the rest of their life. Yeah, except take for example the multitude of lottery winners who lost it all. Once you start spending, it's hard to stop, even for people who are generally good with money. You're not going to double your money, so cool it. During typical times, you'll get around 3.5% on a 10-year US Treasury bond. So let's say you put about $18.2 million towards that. That's about 20% of the $91.2 million you have left after your absurdly generous family gift. With a 3.5% return, you'll pull down $638,000 every year. If you somehow manage to lose everything else, you'll still have that, and you'll be in the top 1% of income in the US. And that's income that's safe. If we get to the point where the US defaults on those bonds, we're in far worse shape than worrying about money. If you really want an extra layer of security, you might also consider picking another G7 or mainstream country other than the US if the US somehow dissolves into anarchy or Britney Spears is elected to the US Senate. Put some fraction in something like Swiss government bonds at 3%. If the Swiss stop paying on their government debt, well, then you know money really means nothing anywhere on the globe anymore. If this happens, I'd start studying sustainable agriculture, because you might have to start feeding yourself. Number 9, where do I invest the rest? So after taxes, 20% for your family and friends, 20% in stable government bonds, that leaves you with another $72.9 million. Personally, I'd dump half of this, or $36.4 million, into a boring S&P 500 index fund. Find something with low fees. You're going to be constantly tempted to retain sophisticated financial advisors who will charge apparently nominal fees. Don't do this. Even if you lose every other dime, you still have that $638,000 per year you didn't have before that will keep coming in until the US dissolves into anarchy. So why waste a bunch of money and time on financial advisors who are just going to try to get you to invest in risky ventures? Instead, just drop that $36.4 million into a low-fee index fund. Unless we have an unprecedented downturn, the likes of which the US has never seen, you should see a return of around 7 to 9% over the next 10 years. You should expect not to touch even a dime of this money for the next 10, 15, or even 20 years. In 20 years, $36.4 million could easily become $115 million. And then lastly, you still have another $36.4 million to do whatever you want with. Buy some houses, travel the world, eat lobsters and caviar for every meal. It's up to you. You thought winning the lottery would make your life easier. No, not quite. The truth is, managing such a large sum of money is a huge responsibility. That being said, there are a select few number of lottery winners who have done it the right way, and that's exactly why you don't hear about them, because they've managed to remain anonymous. In all honesty, there's no guarantee that you'll be free from the ill effects that befall most lottery winners, but following these steps will at least put you on the right path. Best of luck to you, and congratulations on your big win.